The Lakers take Bronny James at 55.
Kristaps Porzingis will definitely miss the start of next season.
The Ken Holland era has come to an end.
Nathan McKinnon cleans up at the NHL awards.
Are the Clippers and Paul George playing a game of chicken?
The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
I'm Peter Bukowski. The Big 6 in 60 is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $20 off your first ticket purchase. Terms apply. Today, we get the local insights from the top stories in sports, including the Celtics with an injury that could last into next season potentially, and the future of Paul George very much up in the air. But we start with the biggest story of the day. The Los Angeles Lakers did what everyone thought they might do and drafted Bronny James with the number 55 overall pick in the NBA draft. We've seen father and son play alongside each other in sports before, but the Lakers selection gives us a chance to see it on an NBA court for the first time. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves here. We still don't know if Bronny will see solid minutes, any minutes, ride the bench, or even make the team, although cutting him would make for an awkward conversation with dad. Locked On Lakers host Brian and Andy Kamenetsky tried to figure out what to expect from something we've never seen before in the NBA.
I think this is the most controversial thing about the Bronny thing. And our friend Darius Soriano tweeted out, and I agree with him 100%, a lot of projection going on here. I think a lot of people are just kind of projecting what they feel about LeBron, what they feel about Rich Paul, what they might feel about the Lakers. I mean, I saw somebody say basically saying that the Lakers are doing things, they've given over the keys in ways they never would have for Kobe, people rolling over in their graves. And I am 100% confident that if Kobe had a son who was draft eligible while Kobe was still playing, the Lakers would have drafted that kid.
Let me tell you guys,
0% chance they wouldn't have done it.
Let me tell our listeners and viewers something. As two guys that were around the team on a regular basis, closer inside the building to those teams than we were with the current LeBron incarnation. If you think LeBron has leverage over the Lakers, folks, you ain't seen Jack bleep.
They would have drafted Kobe's son.
Kobe's leverage over the organization makes LeBron's look laughable. Right. It makes it look barely more than your and mine.
Let's just set that aside for a minute. But yes. I think is it possible? Of course, it's possible that Bronny is a hostage in this situation. Is being dragged along by the wishes and ambitions of his father, and Rich Paul manipulating all these things. And the Lakers just took him. Did the Lakers take him to ironclad guarantee that LeBron James would stay after opting out of his contract? I think today or tomorrow or Friday, I believe it is. Probably. I'm sure that played into it. And you know what? That's a smart use of the 55th pick to make sure your star doesn't walk. But I'll say this. In the absence of evidence, and Bronny, you are correct, has been very low-key talking about these things. And he has said most of the time when he talks about it that he wants to be judged on his own as a basketball player. Almost anywhere he was going to go, there are maybe some exceptions where he could have just sort of played in anonymity, relative anonymity. He goes to other places. It's because they're trying to lure his dad there, to come, demand a trade, whatever it might be. Without evidence to the contrary, I am just unwilling to go to a place where I say that LeBron James, who is by all accounts a devoted and dedicated father who loves his children deeply, and Rich Paul, who has known Bronny James since birth, are acting in a way that is contrary to what both they believe are Bronny's best interests and what Bronny, to the extent that any 18-year-old or 19, what is he, 19 or 20?
I believe he's 19.
19-year-old, this is why they hire agents. I fully believe that Rich Paul, were he to believe this was a terrible idea for Bronny, would tell that to LeBron. And I think if Bron thought it was a bad idea for his son, he would not, he would tell the Lakers to send him somewhere else. In the absence of evidence to the contrary, I think it is irresponsible to, run with this idea that he's some sort of hostage. That's all I have to say about that. I mean, if you want to talk about that or how Pelinka started his press conference today,
I don't
the wrong way.
I don't disagree with you. The idea that he's being held hostage in this is too strong. That being said, if Bronny's wishes were truly to prove himself on his own merits, if I were Rich Paul, unless he really has a lot of specific apprehensions about other franchises around the league, I think it sets up Bronny better to prove himself as his own guy, to not have it look like he was drafted in any way as a favor to his father. Like, that sets it up.
It's reasonable.
It's inarguable that sets it up better.
There's no question. But there are, like I said, I think there are, and we can get deeper into this because I want to get into the.
That's what I'm about to set up.
Yeah.
If the Lakers, I think, want to help Bronny in this pursuit of being seen as his own person, they need to be more mindful of this. And I say this because Rob Pelinka, in starting out his address to the media, I mean, this was literally his opening remarks. So this was not set up off a question, anything like that. His opening remarks began talking about the potential historical significance of this type of father-son duo that, by the way, isn't at this point guaranteed, which Rob acknowledged. LeBron may still opt out. We want to respect his space. Then began talking about Bronny James as a player and a person. To me, the obvious thing to do in that situation is you begin talking about Bronny James, the player and the person, then get to the potential historical significance. But only really, if I was doing this, if asked, as opposed to
I agree with you,
bringing this up
because
proactively on your own.
They're not mutually exclusive. Would you agree? Like, the historical nature of it, the cool factor of this is cool. It's
sure.
Literally, and it's probably really cool for both of them.
I hope
Bronny,
it is.
like most young players, has an incredible opportunity to learn by practicing and playing with LeBron. But like, to lump them together, Andy, I agree with you, is a mistake. And to put the history and the cool factor first, it is a massive unforced error by Pelinka.
Right. And,
it makes him look like a carnival novelty show. Well, he doesn't need to be.
Furthering that, Pelinka was asked about how the Lakers handle the additional media attention. He said, quote, "The biggest moments in sports happen with the Lakers, and that's how we're built, and we're excited to see this story unfold." Again, he's not a carnival attraction, Bronny James. Like, they need to be conscious of this again, because at least and I don't know Bronny James, and I'm not going to tell LeBron how to dad, but from the outside looking in, from the thing based purely on the things I have heard Bronny say, this feels like the best way to give Bronny what he seems like he wants. That's all. I agree with you.
I don't
potentially quite cool.
I don't know if what he's saying is a reflect. I think what he said was so basic and reserved and quiet, in my opinion, that I think it is reading too much into it to decide that it is or is not in line with what he wants or doesn't want. So I just disagree with you a little bit about that. But the correct answer there is Bronny James. Like, when Pelinka's asked about it, Bronny James is the 55th pick in the draft. At some point, we hope that he and his dad are probably going to play together, but we have a lot of space between now and then.
Yes.
And when the moment comes, obviously we'll treat it well, and we'll treat it with the importance it deserves. And but he's the 55th pick in the draft, and he's got a lot of work to do before he can get on an NBA floor. That's the correct answer to the question.
I just would like to see a conscious effort to treat Bronny James as his own person. And that's going to take conscious awareness by everybody. I agree with you. It is
that part. I agree with you 100%.
This is a for nothing else, happy for LeBron, because despite what he may put out there, it's clearly something that he wants, because otherwise, I promise you, this would not be happening. So congratulations to him.
Stay up to date on all things Lakers by subscribing to Locked On Lakers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up, more bad injury news for the Celtics and Kristaps Porzingis. And can the Clippers get Paul George to take his player option for next season? That's next on the Big 6 in 60. I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games. And the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. I mean, keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up a bet anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. Right now, 5 teams have odds better than 10-1 to win the World Series. According to FanDuel, the LA Dodgers are the favorites, plus 320. Right behind them, the Yankees and Phillies, each with odds at plus 450. I have that Phillies ticket. I think it's 16-1, maybe longer. But there's the Braves, 9-1, and the Orioles at plus 950. And the Guardians, who currently look like a really, really good team, at 22-1. Hold on. Can I just do that right now? Head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to the Big 6 in 60, where our local experts take a deeper dive into the day's biggest sports stories. I'm Peter Bukowski. Kristaps Porzingis fought through injury to come back for the Boston Celtics in the NBA Finals. And yesterday, Boston announced that Porzingis had surgery on another injury he suffered in those finals and will miss the start of next season. There's no reason for Boston to worry about anything other than celebrating right now. But could these piling injuries be a problem for Porzingis and the Celtics throughout next year? Locked On Celtics host John Corrales gave his thoughts.
Porzingis is going to be out 5 to 6 months after surgery on his ankle. I presume that the 3-month recovery from the surgery thing that's kind of been bandied about still holds true, and that after that is a rehab strengthening, because Porzingis will have spent basically 3 months not on his feet. So he will have to go through all of the strengthening, conditioning, and all that stuff. So that will take a month or two getting him ready for NBA basketball. And that's why we're at the 5 to 6 months. So that brings him into Thanksgiving to Christmas time. So what was your initial reaction when you heard that timeline?
So, I mean, I tweeted this. My initial reaction was like, there's not a better time for a team to announce a lengthy absence for their star center than like late June after a championship run, right? Like, just like, yeah, man, you go take every single second that you need to get yourself better. The Celtics are chilling in your absence, right? Like, I mean, will this affect their, I don't know, race for the 1 seed next year? Like, yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe not. Like, they're quite good not. Without him. But yeah, I mean, it's like, I think the initial reaction is like, that's a lot, it's a long recovery. And, you look at a guy like Porzingis, who has had so many injury issues, who the Celtics did everything right with him all year, right? Never pushed his minutes, never really, just did everything to keep him healthy. And he's a big dude. He is very tall and he's skinny and he's injury prone. And, these types of things happen. So, if you can push the start of his year a little deeper into the year, that's not the worst thing either. So I think just in general, sounds like it's good that the surgery was successful. I don't think it's any kind of surprise that the Celtics are going to be extremely conservative with how they bring him back and, how slow they are in doing that. I mean, they absolutely should be. They've got, plenty of depth. They've got guys behind him. They're going to win a lot of games with or without him. And whenever he's on the floor, he is a complete game changer. So try to have him on the floor during the postseason as much as possible. I think that's, if you're looking at a plan for next season, I think the biggest thing should be like, hey, well, let's see what the playoffs look like with Porzingis, if at all possible.
Yeah. I like that tweet because it's so true. There's still like confetti tucked away somewhere in the Boston streets, hasn't all been cleaned up. And the people are like, most people are like, sure, take all the time you need, buddy. We're good.
See in February.
That's right. There are people who are like, just bring them back for the playoffs. That's all. But but honestly,
everybody's reaction to it was Shannon Sharp, like being like, "That ain't a problem. That ain't a problem. That is not a problem."
That's right. The optimistic side is okay. So he comes back on Christmas, which is, as we all like to say, basically when the season starts. You get him kind of January, February, then All-Star break. Great. Get a couple of months, under you. How are you feeling? Take a break, relax. Then, March, April, take another week off while the play-in tournament works out, and assuming the Celtics are a top 2 seed. And you know what? Even if they're not a top 2 seed, let's say it costs the Celtics early and they drop to a 3 seed. Is anybody worried after seeing what we've seen about the Celtics winning a road game in the playoffs? Right. I'm not worried about that at all. I think the Celtics obviously they've won a ton of road games in the playoffs. So home court advantage, no problem. We'll just go get that in the playoff series and go get home court advantage back. So I'm not too worried about that. The championship buys them so much leeway with this. And frankly, I feel like there's so much that's going to be lifted off of their shoulders from they clearly got tight in the finals. They clearly got tight. And even in game 5, all of the tightness, it was Drew Holiday who came in and was like, "Hey guys, I've been here before. Don't worry. I'm going to bail you out. We're going to win this thing. And we're all just going to have some fun." I don't think that tightness comes back, next season. I think they're good. So maybe that gets them through. We'll figure out what they do with Luke Cornett, but I think that puts a little bit more of a priority on re-signing him.
Yeah, I think so.
They bring Tillman back too. You've got 3 guys there that I'm comfortable with. Cornett to play his normal role. He was good last season.
Yes.
Tillman, who after having, coming in midstream, losing his father, which was horrible.
Yeah.
Getting an off season, if he can come back, knowing that he's the switchable guy.
Yeah.
That's good. And maybe the thing that I don't realize about Tillman is he's 25 years old.
Yeah.
He looks like he's 34, but
right. No, he looks like he's 38, just like Al Horford, because he looks like Al Horford.
That's right. That's right. But
no, I want to see more Tillman. I'm
absolutely
very interested to see that. That's not just there's injury insurance there. Let's get a closer look at this guy, because there's some stuff there.
There is. And then you got Nemaesh Keita, who had stretches where he's and they upgraded his contract. So he's around. He's a guy you can throw in there in certain situations that serviceable. I think they're okay. They're not going to have to lean on Horford too much. No. And again, I kind of don't care if it costs them. Let's say they lose, I don't know, they were a 64-win team. Let's say they're a 55-win team. Let's say a little 54-win team. Who cares?
Who cares? Who cares?
Top, right? That to me, it's okay, so that brings them back down to the rest of the pack.
Yeah.
Still potentially a 1 seed. Right? You lose 10 games off your lead from last season, you're still the top seed. But okay, let's give these other teams some credit. Maybe the Knicks, maybe they're better. Maybe the Bucks figured out, who knows? But whatever. The Celtics are still going to be in the mix for the top 1, 2, 3. They are built to withstand this. They've got a lot of experience winning without Porzingis. I'm I obviously not the best, but I don't look at this and be like, "Oh my God, oh no, they're not." Doom and gloom. Oh, it's funny. There are some people who are doom and gloom, "Oh, well, there goes the repeat." Oh my God,
it's gonna be okay, guys.
Yeah.
No,
okay.
I mean,
we're good.
The thing that's very funny to me about that, right, is Kristaps Porzingis is an employee with unlimited PTO and a company that will approve all of his PTO. You know what I mean? He's just they're "Yeah, man, yeah, take another one. dig another one. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. We got
good.
this.
We got it.
this. We need you for one for
Yeah.
like a 2-month stretch.
Yeah, that's it. So that's cool. We're I think everybody's cool. None of us is worried. It's the beginning of the season, and we don't even know what the schedule looks like. We don't know. Like maybe the first couple of months will be, kind of easy. Who knows? Who knows? We'll see. We'll revisit that down the road.
Stay up to date on all things Celtics by subscribing to Locked On Celtics, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On the West Coast, the LA Clippers would like to keep Paul George, but LA and George still haven't agreed on a new contract as he decides whether or not to exercise his player option with the Clippers. Paul could decide to make $48.8 million by staying in LA or become a free agent. And while the decision would be easy for most of us, what's that song? Gone, take the money and run. Locked On Clippers host Darian Vaziri told us this hasn't been quite that simple.
Paul George, we know, doesn't want to leave LA. He doesn't prefer to. He came here to win a championship. He came here with Kawhi. He's had a say in so many of the moves to get guys here. Excuse me. Get some of his friends. Reggie Jackson, John Wall, Russell Westbrook, even James Harden, who we knew. He wants to be here. But clearly the front office and Paul don't see eye to eye right now with the contract situation. Paul has one more year left on his deal that he can opt into. Kawhi had the same exact deal, but he re-signed. And that's kind of where all of this got a little murky. Because when Kawhi Leonard re-signed, it was like, okay, so, I mean, these guys came here together. Their timelines are going to align, right? Because their contracts have aligned. So it was then, talked about by media and asking Paul George whether or not he was going to sign an extension or what was the progression with coming to an agreement about an extension and all this. And Paul said, we are going to work together to work something out. So by all accounts, Paul George wants to be here, but he doesn't necessarily want the contract that Kawhi got. And Kawhi Leonard got that 3 years, $150 million. And that is where things get tricky because Paul George wants 4 years. He knows this is the last big contract he's probably going to get. And it was $152 million to be exact for Kawhi's contract. And Kawhi could have gotten 4 years, $220, right? The max. Paul George can try to get the max, and it's rumored that some teams will be willing to pay the max for him. But the Clippers clearly don't want to, right? And Paul George shouldn't expect to get the max. If he thinks that, he's just being greedy. The biggest question I have is, have the Clippers offered Kawhi's contract? My, guess, because I don't know for a fact, and I'm going to try to get you guys more information on it. My guess is that they offered him a little bit less because he's not as good as Kawhi. And he even said, they can use his own podcast against him and be like, look, you even said that Kawhi is the number one option. So we're going to pay you a little less if that's okay. We've paid you the same amount the last couple of years. The production hasn't been there from you. But Paul could always say, at least I've been on the court, in more playoff games. And that's valid. But at the end of the day, it's clear what's happening. The Clippers don't want to pay him more than 3 years because they want the contracts to align, he and Kawhi's. He wants more than 3 years. The Clippers are seemingly confident, though, that he's not going to leave for Philadelphia. And I honestly would be in agreement with them. You think Paul George is going to leave his family? His parents get to come to every game. I see them there. Going to ice cold Philly. And even when he said it's not about winning a championship above all. And plus, let's be honest, I do think Paul George wants to get paid, but does he want to get paid that bad where he, basically go across the country? I don't think so. He just had such a huge contract. He's made a lot of money in his career. He's got a beautiful house. He's got a beautiful, he can do what he wants. It's not like this guy's struggling financially, at least I don't think. But of course, a lot of players do struggle financially after the league. But we're in a new era with new contracts. I have a hard time thinking that that's going to happen. But who knows? I just don't think, even if so, Paul George is the type of guy, especially with what you're seeing him already do in terms of his off the court business avenues. I don't think Paul George is the type of player that's going to go bankrupt or anything after his career is over. He's pretty smart in that respect. It looks like, and it seems. So, like, I don't think he's fiending the bag that hard. And honestly, if I'm the Clippers, I would play chicken. I would be like, look, bro, are you actually going to go? Are you actually going to go to Philly? Or, I mean, because there are not that many teams that are going to be willing to just sign him outright and have the cap to sign him outright. Orlando, you want to go all the way to Orlando, Florida, and play with a bunch of young dudes instead of potentially taking, 4 years, 120. Or I'm sorry, 3 years, 120. So $40 million a year. But man, as of me recording this episode, OG Anunoby, who's is a fantastic role player, got paid $200+ million, $42 million per year for the Knicks. Now, of course, people aren't going to sign Paul George to that right now. At least I wouldn't be so sure. But if that's the market for OG Anunoby, Paul George's camp can be like, look, I know he's younger, but he's still a role player. Like, this is Paul George we're talking about. And also, as I'm filming this, I'm probably going to make an episode on what the Knicks moves mean for the Paul George situation. But Mikal Bridges being traded for 5 first-round picks, like, this is the market for role players. Or maybe it's just the Knicks. I don't know. But, like, if I'm negotiating and I'm Paul George and his camp and Aaron Mintz and those guys, I'm like, look, you're talking about a guy who's a consistent 22 points a game on great shooting splits. You can use him off ball. You can use him on ball. He can do a little pick and roll. He's consistently made the playoffs in everywhere besides that 2022 season where his co-star was out the entire year and he missed 51 games himself. And basically, the only 2 seasons he's missed the playoffs is when he's missed the majority of the season. When he's playing the majority of a season, he will get you to the playoffs. And the Warriors, I'm sorry, not the Warriors. But yeah, the Warriors, if we're going to talk about them later. But, a lot of these teams, though, have made the playoffs. They don't have that issue, but just another star caliber player can't really hurt. And Paul George, I mean, yeah, he has his weird statements where he's like, I wasn't on the ball enough. And then he'll be like, I was on the ball too much. Besides that stuff, he's pretty adaptable in playing in different teams because he has off-ball ability. But anyway, the game of chicken is alive and well. The Clippers don't think he's willing to go to the East Coast and pack everything up here. Like, his family is here. He said he wants to retire here.
Stay up to date on all things Clippers by subscribing to Locked On Clippers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Up next, Nathan MacKinnon won his first MVP award, and the Oilers will need a new general manager before they start thinking about another chase for the cup. This is the Big 6 in 60 from Locked On. Game Time makes getting to the ballpark even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event. Have you heard how many times I've said the word tickets? They're obsessed with them. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. There, I said it again. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price on tickets. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the free app and new users can get $20 off their first purchase with code Locked On. Terms apply. That's code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed. This is the Big 6 in 60. A closer look at the 6 biggest stories in sports. I'm Peter Bukowski. The NHL gave out its season awards yesterday with the Avalanche's Nathan MacKinnon taking home the Hart Memorial Trophy as the league's MVP. MacKinnon beat Connor McDavid and Nikita Kucherov for the award, winning it for the first time in 4 tries as a finalist. MacKinnon also took home the Ted Lindsay Award for the league's most outstanding player. And the Locked On Avalanche host Chris.
It was just his time. I've been saying it for quite a while now that I really just feel like the writers will right some wrongs here and finally give Nathan MacKinnon his due so he can just complete out that resume, which is already just pretty incredible. And now he's got this. Now he has the Hart as the league MVP, and he wins the Ted Lindsay as the MVP as voted on by the players. So everybody is in agreement that he is the best player in the league this year.
I mean, how can you not? When you look at his resume, you look at this season, it's honestly the greatest season of a member of the Colorado Avalanche. You could debate like time and place, Sakic, Forsberg, I don't care. What Nathan MacKinnon did this year was absolutely incredible. And I mean, come on, like you have the NBA MVP and the NHL MVP in the same city, same year. It's an incredible feat. Like, it's what a time to be a sports fan in Denver right now. And what you just witnessed in Nathan MacKinnon and this season, there's not enough words you can use, and he's getting the hardware to supplement the lack of words that you can use for this incredible season.
Yeah, it's the type of guy that's not just gonna say like, okay, mission accomplished. So he is gonna be right back out there gunning for not only to win this again, to win a Stanley Cup again. He's got, you had an MVP to your resume along with the Stanley Cup, and for almost everybody, that's a successful career. And yeah, I mean, his career has been a massive success so far, but he's not satisfied. He knows he still has 10 more years to play, maybe. And he wants to keep winning these awards and Stanley Cups as many as possible. So he's not just going to sit back and be like, I've accomplished everything I wanted to accomplish. He's gonna keep on this. So I agree with you, man. Like I just, his season was we've never seen it before for an Avalanche or Nordiques team. So, and I think the right and the league noticed as far as the players. And I'm going to bring up the voting here in a minute because it was pretty. He had the numbers, man.
Yeah,
like I thought it was going to be razor thin. Kind of wasn't. Go ahead.
And see the thing with Nathan MacKinnon, like I think the big takeaway for non-Avalanche fans, it's going to be shocking to find out this is his first. Just because of the career he's had, you're going to go back and look, you're like, really, this was his first? That's incredible. And it's not going to be his last, I'm pretty sure. The way Nathan MacKinnon's playing, like once he's got that kind of, he's got the hardware now. He's got the Lindsay and the heart. And now he's going to be in that conversation. He's in that well-respected by his peers and the writers. He's going to be up there. It's like he's won it before. He should win it again. He's going to be up there in that Connor McDavid conversation where Connor McDavid doesn't have that cup. Nate has it all right now.
Well, I think, him winning this just kind of closes the gap. I don't know how I want to phrase this. Like we talked about this before, where we feel like Nathan MacKinnon ranks in this whole ranking thing with Connor McDavid, Connor McDavid is just, he's incredible, right? But we were having a conversation of like, we just don't feel like that chasm between Connor McDavid and Nathan MacKinnon is as large as everybody wants to make it out to be. But I feel like that goes for other players too, not just Nathan MacKinnon. I think, yes, Connor McDavid is otherworldly, but so is Nathan MacKinnon. Mm-hmm. So is Austin Matthews. Who, in a few years, what are we going to get from Connor Bedard? So I feel like you just have so many more guys who can gun for this award. And it's not just, every year, Connor McDavid will probably be the favorite to win this every year. But that's why you play the season. And as each season goes on, Connor McDavid will probably win a few more of these, but I don't feel like it's going to be like these runaway victories anymore for him because those gaps are closing from him to other players, not just Nathan MacKinnon. And this year, Nathan MacKinnon had the number of the entire league to do what he did, those 19 game point streaks, the home point streak. It was just, he was doing things that you hadn't seen ever, number one, or close to Gretzky. Yeah. And we'll say it again. I really think the league should have turned that one assist around that they didn't give him that ended his streak. But nonetheless, if they did give him that one, it would have ended against Winnipeg when they got blown out, which I think was their last game at home. So he would have tied Gretzky because Gretzky they only had 40 home games in that one season, so he would have tied Gretzky. Nonetheless, he still was right up against him. And when you have those, Kucherov had gaudy numbers and he had a great season. But when you're doing the things that MacKinnon did in terms of I'm matching Gretzky for some things, that doesn't go unnoticed by writers.
Yeah, and with this whole McKinnon McDavid thing, I think it's gone from like how it used to be like Gretzky and Mario Lemieux was down here, two greats, and you observed in two different categories. It feels like fast forward a decade, this is like Sidney Crosby and Alex Ovechkin. Whatever side of that rivalry you were on, you were right when it came to the best player in the league. And I feel like for the 2010s and forward, it's going to be McDavid, McKinnon, whoever you choose. That's the right answer. They're both incredible talents, and it's just who ends up winning more hardware that year.
And then you see like Kucherov give the most bland interview of bland interviews. I mean, the guy has the personality of a wet blanket. And, you know, I'm sure there were some writers who didn't vote for him. Maybe they take that into account. They shouldn't, but maybe, like, you know, his attitude at the All-Star game, that stuff like that doesn't go unnoticed. And I'm just wondering, kind of just sitting here, like, if there were people who didn't vote for him that were maybe on the fence and they see an interview like he did at the award show, they feel like, yeah, okay, I think I picked the right guy in McKinnon. And if there's some people that picked Kucherov and they see the interview and they were like, man, what maybe why did I pick this guy? I'm kind of being, you know, tongue in cheek here, but he just has zero personality. And as far as like a rooting interest goes, how do you not root for someone like Nathan McKinnon, who hasn't won this award, who at least has some personality, to Nikita Kucherov, who just doesn't know how to smile?
No, and you bring up a good point, and you kind of said it like tongue in cheek and like jokingly, but honestly, his performance in the All-Star game had probably cost him the Ted Lindsay and the respect of a lot of his peers.
Yeah.
And it's like he didn't show up. He just coasted through, and everybody else is kind of having fun and trying to make it an event. And you have him like sandbagging. You're like, okay, whatever. You could have all the best numbers, but if this is how you're going to treat the All-Star game, whatever, dude. And then when it comes to like the heart, yeah, you could have great gaudy numbers, but what are you doing to advance the game? Like beyond that, like when it comes to off the ice stuff, like if you're going to have that kind of attitude when it comes to the game, like what are they going to do when they put up your highlight? This is the Hart Trophy winner, and they're going to show you like coasting through the All-Star game. This is not good for the game of hockey. You can have all the numbers in the world, but if you want to be the best player that epitomizes the best in the game of hockey, both Lindsay and Hart, it's hard to not choose between McKinnon and McDavid, and maybe eventually Matthews, depending on what that looks like in the future.
Yeah.
Stay up to date on all things Avs by subscribing to Locked On Avalanche, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. After the break, the Edmonton Oilers will have much of their roster that got to the Stanley Cup final back for another season. But one important piece to the Edmonton puzzle walked out the door on Thursday. We'll get you the info on General Manager Ken Holland's departure on the Big 6 in 60. I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games. And the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. I mean, keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up a bet anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Right now, 5 teams have odds better than 10-1 to win the World Series. According to FanDuel, the LA Dodgers are the favorites, plus 320. Right behind them, the Yankees and Phillies, each with odds at plus 450. I have that Phillies ticket. I think it's 16-1, maybe longer. But there's the Braves, 9-1, and the Orioles at plus 950. And the Guardians, who currently look like a really, really good team, at 22-1. Hold on. Can I just do that right now? Head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to the Big 6 in 60. I'm Peter Bukowski. After leading the Oilers to the Stanley Cup final this season, Edmonton General Manager Ken Holland and the team agreed to part ways on Thursday. It was no secret that the Oilers might not renew the Hall of Famer's contract after this season, but what happens now that Holland is out the door? Locked On Oilers host Nick Zararis mulled the options.
With the benefit of hindsight, there are a lot of trades or free agent signings or draft picks you just wouldn't make if you had the opportunity to make the right decision with the benefit of present day information. So you got to remember, Ken Holland is coming in here in the spring of 2019 of Peter Chiarelli throwing money at all kinds of Oiler problems, signing Cam Talbot in free agency comes to mind. In particular, he had one good season for them, signing Benoit Pouliot in free agency. That comes to mind. But the Oilers under Chiarelli And because of that, the Oilers were not making the most of their situation. I remember when Ken Holland gets hired in 2019, the Oilers have been to the playoffs once in the span of their last Stanley Cup final appearance, 2006, and Ken Holland's arrival. That was McDavid's second year in the league, where the Oilers lost to the Ducks in the second round in 6 games. They very well could have won that series against the Ducks, and then maybe we're having a different conversation if that team makes a conference final that early. Maybe there are different decisions to be made. Maybe Chiarelli doesn't get as aggressive with some of the decisions he makes. But in the benefit of context, we'll start with the outset. Ken Holland is undoubtedly the most successful Oilers general manager of the 21st century. Now, that's not a particularly high bar. They made the playoffs a handful of times at the beginning of the century, 2001, 2, and 3. They make the Cup 506, and then they don't make the playoffs again until 2016, 2017. It is a long layoff in there. Then they miss the playoffs 2 more times. Ken Holland comes in, and we should account for this. Ken Holland had to stay in Detroit like 3 weeks before agreeing to jump ship to Edmonton to take the Oilers job. So with that in mind, it's hard to kvetch. It's hard to really view Ken Holland because the bar was so low. Did he do a tremendous job? No, not really. Did he do an atrocious job? No, not really. There's a lot of meh and whatever decisions. There's a few god-awful decisions. There are a few morally questionable decisions, which we'll talk about later. And then there's a few good ones. So it's a very mixed bag, but the facts are the facts. The Edmonton Oilers won more playoff series under Ken Holland than they've won under any other general manager in this century. And they've had quite a few. Kevin Lowe, Steve Tambellini, Craig McTavish, Peter Chiarelli, and then Keith Gretzky was the interim GM for the months between Peter Chiarelli's firing and Ken Holland's hiring. 1 playoff appearance in that 13-year period, and they only won 1 playoff round in that time. Lost to the Ducks in 6 games. That was the only playoff appearance McDavid and Draisaitl had to their ledger before Holland's arrival. Now, you got to remember, they do lose in the qualifying round to the Coyotes in 2020, losing to Taylor Hall in their own building. Not a great look. And Ken Holland has made some okay decisions. He's hired 3 different coaches during his tenure, Dave Tippett, Jay Woodcroft, and Chris Knobloch, who was hired on an interim basis back in November. But we're all going to assume he's getting this job full time. In Ken Holland's tenure, the Oilers have 6 playoff series wins to their name. To be fair, 3 of those happened this year. The 3 wins against the Kings, the Stars, and the Canucks, and unfortunately not 4. If the Oilers win the Stanley Cup with Ken Holland, I think there's any conversation that he's easily their best general manager since the dynasty window, but because they didn't, he only gets to be the best general manager of the century. And again, that's not a particularly high bar. The Oilers were not well run. It was very important for them to kind of close the door on the old hockey man club. And yes, Ken Holland is one of the old hockey guys, 4 Stanley Cups in Detroit, long track record in that organization, but moving away from guys who have direct ties to your organization, Kevin Lowe, McTavish, Tambellini, you can't take away those guys' track records as players. What they did for the Oilers as players, incredible. You can't, and that's the real conundrum of hiring team legends to do anything in your organization. It's a really untenable position for the team and the coach because, A, you can't embarrass a legend. It's why when the Yankees were purportedly maybe going to hire Derek Jeter to be their general manager, I thought that was a really bad idea. It's why anytime Mark Messier has asked to be the Rangers head coach or the Rangers general manager, that's a really bad idea because that puts someone in the position of how do I fire Mark Messier? And the Oilers do have questions. They have a lot of decisions they need to make this summer to address this upcoming season and the one after that. We covered it on yesterday's show. 8 unrestricted free agents, 2 restricted free agents, a whole lot up for Jeff Jackson to decide on a period of time. The Stanley Cup final ended on Monday. I am recording this episode Thursday evening. It's going to go out Friday. That's 4 days. They've had 4 days to figure this out. Ken Holland told the Oilers Wednesday that he was not going to continue the position. He would not be seeking a new contract. Free agency opens on Monday. The buyout window has been open since Tuesday. The draft is this weekend. There is a whole lot that is going to happen in a very short period of time. Now, You assume the Oilers have been game planning for both contingencies. If Holland stays, he was working on a plan. If he doesn't stay, the support staff, the other people in the front office, pro scouting, amateur scouting, all of these people are working on their plans based on what they think is going to happen and having multiple outcomes. At least that's what a well-run team does. They handle their business up front. They have plans laid out. And because of that, you hope they are set up for success. There are big fish to fry. The Oilers need to figure out if Leon Draisaitl is going to get the long-term extension this summer, and they need to figure out if Evan Bouchard is going to get the long-term extension this summer. They're both eligible for extensions. They are both under team control for the upcoming season. With all of that said, you don't want to give Ken Holland a great grade because, frankly, some of the mistakes that he made, the Oilers are going to have to deal with the ramifications of well after he's gone. The counterpoint to that is he's the only GM with a real track record of success with this organization in the last 25 years. Again, it's not a particularly high bar, but when you get some results, it's important that you're able to acknowledge both sides of it. And I think Ken Holland, thoroughly middle of the pack. I think C+, B-, right on that curve of average to occasionally above average. And yes, he does have the bell curve, bell curve of having McDavid and Draisaitl handed to him upon taking his job. I don't think Ken Holland is as eager to jump ship from Detroit, which was a sinking ship in 2019, if the team he's going to doesn't have McDavid and Draisaitl.
Stay up to date on all things Oilers by subscribing to Locked On Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Up next, the NHL Draft starts tonight, and we'll get you all the names you need to know going into the first round on the Big 6 in 60. Game Time makes getting to the ballpark even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event. Have you heard how many times I've said the word tickets? They're obsessed with them. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. There, I said it again. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price on tickets. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the free app and new users can get $20 off their first purchase with code Locked On. Terms apply. That's code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Big 6 in 60. I'm Peter Bukowski. We wrap things up today on the ice. Well, kinda. The NHL Draft starts tonight with the Sharks expected to take Boston University's Macklin Celebrini with the first overall pick. Do you think they'll be celebrating about? Okay, we won't do that. After San Jose, the Blackhawks will get their pick of the rest of the group to pair up with Connor Bedard. And our Locked On NHL Prospects host Hadi Kalakesh and Sebastian Hyde previewed the first round as the league gets ready to start the festivities in Las Vegas.
But who does Chicago pick at 2 in our opinion? Talk me through that.
Yeah, this is where things open up a little bit, but we have them going for the big right shot defenseman in Artyom Levshunov from Michigan State University in the NCAA, where he was a real two-way force this season, really developed his game a lot. He's an excellent skater, really good offensive instincts, has shown a level of offensive dynamism that shows some real top pair upside on top of being a really solid defensive zone player as well. There are some lapses of concentration, and there's still refinement to be had in his development, but there's a lot to like in his NHL projection. And Chicago wants to have their next stalwart on the blue line, and Levshunov could be just that. But at number 3, the Anaheim Ducks have a bunch of options, but we have them going for a big defenseman, don't we?
Yeah, the biggest one. Anton Salayev, the 6'7" left shot defenseman from Torpedo, goes to Anaheim. I think this is a matter of Anaheim really wanting size, really wanting reliability. Salayev brings both in spades. I think this is a no-brainer if they're looking for size. The combination of skating and length with Salayev is just absolutely ridiculous. He's going to be a defensive specialist. You're going to have to live with some brain farts with the puck, but I think the defensive game makes it more than worth it. We can slip right through the Columbus Blue Jackets, and this is where it gets dicey. Columbus has a couple options at forward, but we think they're going to go for Ivan Demidov, the most dynamic forward from this draft. 6 foot, 196 pounds. Yes, 6 foot, 196 pounds. His measurements were updated. He's a biggish guy. And yeah, he's just got the best hands in the draft by far. I don't think there's any doubt there. Like, he's just so money with the puck. Great shooter, great handler. Like, across the board, his puck skills are ridiculous. So Columbus here at 4th overall is getting probably the highest offensive upside player in this draft, right?
For sure. Like, Demidov has that franchise level offensive production in him, in his potential. And we had some debate here at number 4 because we thought there were a decent amount of candidates, whether it be Gaten Lindstrom or Beckett Seneca even. The options were there, but in the end, this is a new management group led by Don Waddell. And if we can see what Carolina's been doing in the last decade, hoarding talent and elite skill is certainly one of the big things they enjoy doing. And we think that Demidov will be the swing taken at 4th overall. But at number 5, we have the Montreal Canadiens, who also could have considered guys like Beckett Seneca or even Zeev Buium or, TJ Ginla would be in the mix here. But we have them going with Caden Lindstrom, the big power forward centerman who played excellent hockey for the Medicine Hat Tigers in WHL last season when he was healthy. Had a bit of a herniated disc in his back, which took him out of action for a good chunk of the season, but he seems to be recovering very well from that. His medical records have been made available to all teams, so they can be confident in the decision to draft this player. But Lindstrom plays with zest. He plays with physicality and grittiness on top of being incredibly skilled. He has a very high upside. He's going to need a couple seasons to refine his game. He's not the most refined player just as of yet, but that developmental runway is so long. And the upside here could be a first-line power center, which is the type of asset that you dream of getting at 5th overall.
For sure. And now at 6th overall, we have the Utah HC, or whatever they're going to be called in the future, selecting Beckett Seneca, the 6 foot, 380-pound right shot winger from the Oshawa Generals. Seneca rocketed up every board, and I think Utah's going to be looking for a big guy with skill. Seneca brings exactly that. He's the second best stick handler in this draft after Demidov. Like, there's just so much creativity and improvisational skill with Seneca that I think is a safe pick here at 6 overall for Utah. And, he's got upside. He's got a safe floor as a kind of defensive player as well. So there's a lot to work with here. Then at 7th overall, we have the Ottawa Senators picking up Sam Dickinson. And I think this is a pick that gave us the least trouble, the least headache. Dickinson's the most Ottawa Senators pick I can think of. And even though they do need right-handed Ds, Dickinson's safety, his physical profile, the way that he defends, the overall safety of the way that he plays without the puck makes him really good in terms of an option for Ottawa. But on top of that, he's got decent offensive upside. He scored 70 points in 68 games this year from a second power play. Like, there's upside here, and it all goes through his skating. He carries pucks up the ice, shoots in motion, passes in motion. The offensive side of his game is pretty refined, so I think Ottawa's going to like the two-way game with Dickinson and pick him up pretty quickly here. But then at 8th overall, we have a decent option here in Zeev Buium going to the Seattle Kraken. Talk me through his game and what makes him such a good fit with Seattle.
For sure. Like, Zeev Buium is a 6 foot, 185-ish pound left shot defenseman who put up 50 points through 42 NCAA games this season, which is, I believe, an all-time record for a freshman defenseman at the college level. And Buium's probably at this point in time the best defenseman eligible in this draft class. Like, if we're putting projection aside, he is the most refined, the most effective, the best defenseman in this draft class. But the question remains, is he going to remain in that stead in the following seasons? But he's so good on both ends of the ice. He's super escapable, so composed, so intelligent. He reads play so well on both sides of the puck. He's able to really create a bunch of advantages defensively. He's great in sparking the breakout with success and control. He's dangerous in the offensive zone, perhaps more as a distributor than a raw playmaker, but the playmaking flashes are bright as well. So there's a lot to like in his profile. He could be a first pairing defenseman at the end of the day, and Seattle needs some big blue line type of help in their system. But at 9th overall, we have the Calgary Flames, who go and just make the nepotism pick, which is also, in our opinion, the best player available in this slot. So no critique coming from our direction with TJ Ginla, right?
Absolutely. TJ Ginla is just exactly what Calgary needs in their system, not just in terms of revamping the kind of the desire to watch this team and see him develop and follow his dad's footsteps and the storylines there and all that, but just, I mean, overall, the skill set is insane. He's the best board player in this draft, bar none. The way he spins off of checks along the boards, the way he accesses open ice is ridiculous. Fantastic shot, but he's also a fantastic playmaker. Great energy, fantastic hockey sense. There are so many areas of his game that can hit. I think there's not really a chance that Iginla doesn't become a top 6 forward, which getting that at 9th overall is great value for the Calgary Flames. And we close things off here with our top 10 of the mock here with Konsta Helenius going to the New Jersey Devils. And Konsta Helenius, he's got an interesting skill set. I don't know about the upside, but I think that if New Jersey's looking for a safe bet to make the NHL and be kind of your second or third line center, like he's up there, right?
Absolutely. And if you want him to learn the NHL game, there are a few better players to teach it to him than Nico Hischier. Like that is the stylistic mold of player that Helenius could become. And if you have a center depth of Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, and Konsta Helenius, you are set down the middle long term. And that also his ability to play well on the wing beyond just being a natural centerman. He's very effective playing on the wing when he is put in those positions. So being able to chip in a top 6 capacity, I think that Helenius could top out as like a David Krejci style of player in terms of like a second line all rounder who's not going to lead the team in points, but does so many things so well, who coaches, teammates, and fans alike adore having on their team. So while the offensive upside isn't super dynamic, there's so many things he does well, and he's so refined and in his off puck and defensive games. There's so much to like with Helenius.
Stay up to date on all things NHL Draft by subscribing to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks again to all of our hosts for their expert analysis on the biggest stories of the day. Follow your favorite team's podcast wherever you listen and on YouTube for new episodes every weekday. Tune in again next week for a new hour on the 6 biggest stories in sports. This has been the Big 6 in 60 from the Locked On Podcast Network.